All right, so moving from the Santa Monica Bay Watershed, moving on to the LA River. Okay, here we are, LA River Watershed. I think, something you can see right away, we have a lot more, we still have a preponderance of open space, but you see a lot more of this high density residential and a lot more of this industrial going on. So let's do the top 5 here. So open space appears to be still dominant, but very close behind it is high density residential. Trying to go slow. Nice and neat. Yes. Legible. And following up in third, we got a lot of red areas, industrial. So let's go back. So lots of high density residential. A lot of this red you see in Vernon, Bell, Huntington Park, and you can see this is part of the Long Beach. This I believe is a 91 here. So all that really heavily industrialized area along Santa Fe by where the Baby Jordan Plus was. It looks like probably the third or the fourth would be this commercial. And let's see if we can tease out a fifth. I'm thinking probably there is a good amount of orange in there. So I think before we were looking at educational institutions, that purple. It's kind of hard. It kind of get mixed in. Probably still go with educational institutions. So a similar rundown that we saw. See, this is LA, but we kind of flipped the commercial and the residential, the commercial and the industrial. So that's where you're going to get, more potential pollution, not just in terms of volume, but type of chemical you're going to see. You're going to see more negative things like lead, cadmium, ethanol, like the one we talked about in our that warehouse fire. And this water quality, we have less open space. We have less of this, and that's going to equal, less infiltration. And ability to filter, slow water and let it soak into the ground. And because you're going to have high or more of these residential areas, just more people than we saw in Santa Monica, and that always equals more pollution. See if you can fit it in there. And we mentioned before, the commercial, that's a big, again, more people. Trash, cars, all the things are associated with, the oils that cars drip on the road, and bringing that washing off into the lakes and streams, and then therefore into the ocean. So if we compare, say, LA River, where the outflow is in Long Beach, you could probably expect more pollution, more trash in this area. You think about all this industry here, all along. This basically all this industrial tract here is basically the path of the LA River. So a lot of industry, you see, it's right along the river. because typically been cheaper land, so that business can buy them up, and it's cheaper for them to make money. This doesn't have one principal creek or river that empties it. There's a bunch of them along the coast here. Bologna Creek is probably the main one that would have the impact. And you would expect that to be less, although you do see, a significant amount of industrial right here along that Bologna Creek. But overall, probably going to have less than the LA River. Now moving on to San Gabriel, like over half of Long Beach is located in this watershed. It looks like, again, our number one use is open space. So it's the top 5. So open space and looking back, number 2. Oh, number 2. Dang. I would still say it's high density residential, but I think I don't know, it's hard to decide between the commercial and the industrial. There's a lot of industrial stuff here that I wouldn't have expected as much earlier. This is also it's like a smaller, slightly smaller watershed. So we'll go high density residential. And then industry and then commercial. Looks like it's going to be really similar to the LA River Watershed. And all that, yeah, education. So yeah, I did put 6, but that got confused me for a second. So it looks like we have a similar profile to the LA River, where but still I think there's more open space here. Let's look, compare again. I think there's still more open space, and slightly more open space in San Gabriel. So you're going to have all these effects that we have here before, similar to LA River. Again, still it looks like we have the most open space in the Santa Monica watershed. So if we kind of rank them, cleanest to dirtiest, probably rank Santa Monica first, probably San Gabriel second, and then LA third. Okay, so this would be medium quality. So in our little study, so the best would be Santa Monica because of all that open space and not really any industry. Best, medium, San Gabriel, and then the worst water quality that we would expect is that LA River watershed. So the next part, describe, kind of compare them all together, kind of go over the general characteristics. More open space, that's good. we have, less high density residential. That's also good. Also less industry. And that is perhaps the best. Less industry. Those are all things that Santa Monica has in its favor. And we go to LA River, less open space, probably the least in terms of ranking. So less open space, more high density residential, probably the most industry, most industrial areas. That's bad. These are all, bringing it down. In San Gabriel, kind of, medium, comparing the two, medium level of open space. Still lots of high density residential. There's still a decent, a pretty serious amount of industry. So, in terms of, ranking from least to high, so we'd say this, best quality would be, but remember, these are just relatively speaking. I'm sure there are a lot of streams in Santa Monica that have problems, and streams in LA River, San Gabriel that don't have problems. So probably LA River would have the worst quality, just based on our land use analysis. Remember, this is just one piece of data that we're looking at, and that would kind of be in the middle. But still tons of industry. Tons of industry. So here's again, this all comes back to these watersheds are driven by the water cycle. We'll start here with evaporation off of any water on the ground. Could be in a reservoir, could be any water. Condenses in the clouds. It can be transported from one area to another. We have precipitation, where it falls and can infiltrate in the ground, if I have that. Or over here, let's point that out. I think that's important. Runoff, you see this farmland. This is where you have pesticides and fertilizers and silt coming off into the land. Herbicides too, don't forget that. This whole thing here you're seeing is a wastewater treatment plant. These big circular containers are there mixing up the water with oxygen, just hoping to, everything can break down and then improve that water quality until it's released. Oh, here it is. This is where we have infiltration here. And then down here is the groundwater. Remember, this is not renewable in the overall sense. A lot of this water's been here for hundreds of years. So we could try to add more water to it, but the way we tend to use it is that we don't replace it enough. And this right here, storm water. This water coming from, the wastewater treatment is clean. Let me rewrite this. The storm water is going to be pretty dirty. And that's when you have the beach advisories after big rain. Is because this stuff is not treated. Straight off the streets. All the funky stuff, all the chemicals, all the oil. Dirty, polluted. So again, important to know the water cycle. Again, there's barely any of Long Beach is in the LA River, but everything gets channeled right to us. This is you've all heard of the Mississippi River. This is a land use summary for the Mississippi. And you can see that most of it is agricultural land. Let's do a rundown here. This will be different than for us because it's there's rural areas and not rural areas, of course. But the number one is agricultural. So agricultural use, that light green. And then that woodland, and then it looks like rangeland. Where there is not a whole lot happening. And then again, this is a much broader area we're looking at. And let's see, we've got a lot of red splotches here. So maybe we go urban and then probably wetlands to finish it up. So most of these you think are good, but remember this agricultural land has a huge negative impact. Lots of pesticides, fertilizers, herbicides. And that's all going to degrade your water quality and the silt. I mentioned it earlier. Gulf of Mexico. Huge negative impacts in the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, so how might the land use situation? The agricultural lands have a big negative impact on all the waterways. They're trying to get better at managing it, but it's still a massive problem. Now the woodlands are good. The rangeland can be tricky because they might run animals on that rangeland. They can break it apart, poop, and help and actually increase, surface runoff. Urban we've talked about. There should be more wetlands, but they've been filled in. And since there aren't as much as there should be, there's less cleaning of the water. Natural cleaning of the water. Wetlands are nature's natural, cleaning device. So this is the Amazon River. I've always been fascinated with the Amazon. You can see it's kind of a large, not quite circular, but a large area, tons of tributaries. And if we look at this land use, we can see that there is a lot of forest, but we do have a whole bunch of pasture. We have some soybean, other crops that's increasing. Okay, so overall, it's good. Lots of forests, but we can tell, some bad aspects. Agriculture is starting to have a big impact. It has for a while, but it's starting to increase. The jungle used to be pretty inaccessible, but roads have been built. People have been moving in lately. Their government has been encouraging, this movement into the interior, planting crops, slash and burn, use them for a few years, and then move on. So slash and burn, destroys a lot of land. Slash and burn, agricultural techniques are large. Now, this is a river you're all familiar with, the Nile. You can see it's a little more vertically oriented, kind of long, not as wide, but you see it does spread out. Now, we mostly think of the Nile as being in Egypt, but we'll see it's mostly Sudan that has most of the Nile River. So Egypt and Sudan need to cooperate when it comes to the water flow of the Nile River. And normally that's been okay, but there have been a lot of issues lately. But yeah, Egypt, Sudan, you probably heard of Ethiopia, Kenya, you probably have Uganda. But Eritrea you might be less familiar with. And just a comment on this, you'll see if we kind of look at this, looks like a lot of it is bare areas. Maybe let's just do kind of a rundown like we did before. But I don't know, kind of shrublands, bare areas maybe, but then there's lots of cultivated agriculture too. In that bare area, you'll kind of see the separation between the more desert part of the Nile and the more, wooded, where that part of Africa gets a lot more rainfall. Yeah, especially, the Nile Delta cultivated. So it might surprise you that, that Nile River Delta, that Nile River watershed has lots of cultivation going on there. And then probably third is shrublands. And that green part are grasslands. And it looks like less of an urban impact from what we can see earlier. Oh, look at that wetland right there. So maybe number 5 is wetlands, which is good. So just make a comment. Still, lots of agriculture. And that tends to degrade water quality. Okay, and maybe fewer urban areas might, help that water quality, but still, there are big impacts from farming, from agriculture.